Nā koutou, tēnā koutou, kia ora mai tātou katoa.
Mr. Speaker, welcome to the people and the friends of Raukawa who have joined us today to mark this significant milestone in the relationship between the Crown and Ngāti Raukawa. I greet those of you in the House and those watching and listening elsewhere. Mr. Speaker, our guests in the House may have wondered why it was that when Mrs. Turia stood up I walked out. Well, it's not because I have the pit with Mrs. Turia, but far from it. She's my favourite member of Parliament. She's a great woman. But it's because Maurice Williamson always gets very upset when I say that. But I have to say this to Maurice in the immortal words of Lloyd Benson. Maurice is a friend of mine. Maurice is a great politician, but Maurice isn't Tariana Turia. So I stood up and walked out because Mrs. Turia has been the local member of Parliament for many years, and I thought it was entirely fitting and proper that she should lead off in this debate because I know how closely she's followed the debate and how keen she has been to see a just and a durable settlement with Ngāti Raukawa. Ngāti Raukawa have settled their treaty grievance against the Crown not only for the present generation but those before who carried a great burden and those who will follow as you usher in a more optimistic future for the people of Raukawa. And I acknowledge the weight of responsibility that all have felt in undertaking such a responsibility. And I say that in the third reading. It's not formulaic because I know from negotiations just what people have done. And I'm confident that the mana of Raukawa will be widely evident as they use the opportunities the settlement provides to enhance the well-being of their people, their river and their lands, and to advance the standing of Ngāti Raukawa within the community at large. Sir, I begin by acknowledging Kingi Tuheitia me te whare o te kahui ariki. I acknowledge too the respected kaumātua and kuia of Raukawa and those who maintain the home fires of the marae within the Waikato and the surrounding regions. When I introduced the bill, I acknowledged past and present negotiators, Chris Mackenzie, Vanessa Aparaima, Nigel Tahiko, Patricia Carley. I want to say this, I first met Chris Mackenzie, I know his family's up there in the gallery. I met him in 2007. He and others, Stephanie O'Sullivan, who's there, was present at the meeting in Hamilton, briefed me on Raukawa's historical and river claims. Chris has worked for his iwi for many years, and this is a bipartisan debate, so I'm not allowed to say I look forward to seeing him in here at the end of the year. My respect for them and for all their hard work, for their achievements on behalf of their people and for the way they've conducted themselves in what at times has been a very vigorous debate is something I wish again to place on record. Above all, on this special day, thoughts naturally gravitate towards those who have suffered the grievances that are settled today. We also remember those who worked in so many ways and for so long to get the Crown to a position where it acknowledged its wrongs, and those who are not here to see the outcome of their endeavours. I know that the people of Raukawa, along with many members of the House, have many special people in mind at this time. But I need to acknowledge the late Fraser Tahiko, Marina Jacobs, Emre Nikora, Naira Simmons, Peter Thompson, Tommy Rangatutia, and so many others who had the foresight to establish the Trust Board. I salute the very special role played by the late George Rangatutia. As many of you in the gallery know, I had a wonderful day in January 2011 when George and you got me in that bus and we drove around the Rohe. He played a pivotal part in the negotiations, and it was very sad that his health did not allow him to attend the formal signing ceremony for the deed of settlement. After the signing ceremony, Vanessa Louise Upston and I took the deed to George in Waikato Hospital so that he could sign it. It was a very special moment that I'll always treasure. And I said to him, the last thing I said to him was, well, George, I'll see you in a few weeks. But that was not to be. The next time I saw him was on the marae for his tangi. This settlement is a fitting legacy for George and demonstrates all his efforts over many years on behalf of his people. The other day I was in Taniatua for the opening of the great Tūhoi House, and I said to Tamati Kruger that he reminded me of what Harry Truman once said: it's amazing what you can accomplish if you do not care who gets the credit. I think that's the epitaph of George Rangatutia. Mr. Speaker, this settlement has been built on the foresight, the determination and the courage of all these people. As is well known, Raukawa are based in the Waikato region and have been represented in negotiations by the Raukawa Settlement Trust. Its connections cover a significant area from Taupo Nui Atia in the south to Maungatautari in the north, westward into the Rangitoto Ranges and the Waipa Valley, and eastwards into the Kaimai and Mamaku Ranges. And I'm certain members will also be well aware of the importance to Raukawa of the Waikato River, as historically it was the centre of commercial, social and spiritual life. In 2008, Raukawa began negotiations for its comprehensive settlement. These negotiations, as I've said, were not without their complexities, but reached their conclusion with Raukawa and the Crown signing the deed of settlement on 2 June 2012. Mrs. Turia has outlined the essence of the settlement redress, and I will not repeat those comments here, but I want to say something about the historical aspect of the claim. But first let me say this: the Central North Island Forests Land Collective Settlement Act 2008 and the Ngāti Tuwharetoa Raukawa and Te Arawa River Iwi Waikato Act 2010 both addressed aspects of the historical treaty claims of this iwi. It's this bill, however, that brings together all the remaining historical treaty claims. As the bill acknowledges, in 1863, the Crown sent its armed forces into the Waikato, and Raukawa were drawn into the fighting that followed through their whakapapa connections and links to the Kingitanga. I think the historical account and the acknowledgements set out in sections 8 and 9 of the bill are so very important, because what they do is set out in detail further breaches of the treaty visited upon Raukawa in the years that followed, including loss of life through raupatu, confiscation and privatisation of land through the operation of the Native Land Court, the Crown's failure to acknowledge the mana and rangatiratanga of Raukawa, and the failure of the Crown to protect Raukawa interests in their customary resources and significant sites. It is a very sad history. It is a sorry list of dishonoured obligations on the part of the Crown, and I will always remember that day in Tokoroa where we had the airing of grievances. It occurred about 18 months ago, and one does not have to be some kind of bleeding heart liberal to be affected by this history. The history is not good. I take, for example, the old kuia who stayed in her house until the water was lapping around her porch before she left. So my plea to those who send me rude emails, as most assuredly they will do after the speech, they send them after every settlement, especially some strange person in Nelson. She's always telling me I'm an unelected list MP, which is of course an oxymoron. All I say to her is, look, just study the history, look at the facts, because if you look at the facts speak for themselves, and the facts aren't flash. Mr. Speaker, what's been done cannot be undone. Most of what's been lost cannot be returned, but the generous people sitting in the gallery today have accepted the redress contained in their deed of settlement and this bill. And I very much look forward to continuing to work with and getting to know the people of Raukawa. I hope we shall keep in touch long after I've left this place. I'm sure Mrs. Turia feels the same. I look forward to a new era in the relationship between Raukawa and the Crown, one that really does live up to the principles of the treaty. So I wish those in the gallery and the iwi at large all the very best for the future and commend the bill to the House.
Make a fight, Terry.
Tēnā koe, Mr. Speaker.